Welcome to the Equip Podcast. Here you'll find conversations from people of all different walks of life, sharing their experiences, the things the Lord has taught them, and things to equip you. Equip is based on Ephesians 4:11-13 that talks about equipping God's people for works of service so that the body of Christ may be built up. That is our goal here, to build you up and equip you through seasons of ups and downs in life. Welcome back to the Equip Podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Gibson, and today I'm joined by Sherrie McCoy and Jennifer Roeland. Sherrie and Jennifer are two friends that love Jesus and have been leading different groups of women on the topic of friendship. Today, they are here to share some things they have learned from these women as well as from their years of their own friendship. So welcome, Sherrie and Jennifer.
Hi. Thank you.
Now, will y'all introduce yourselves, say your names so that our listeners can kind of figure out whose voice belongs to who?
I'm Sherrie.
Okay.
And I'm Jennifer.
Okay, there you go. Now, as we get started, how many years have y'all been friends?
We were counting this up the other day. About 30 years.
Wow.
Right at 30 years.
Mm-hmm. That's exciting.
It is exciting. Most of my life, actually.
I love that. So how would you define friendship, either one of you or both of you?
I think that is a hard question.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we don't have enough time.
Mm-hmm.
But as I think about it, I think there's all types of friendships. And if I just try to summarize it, it's an opportunity to connect and an opportunity to know someone and to be known.
Mm. So it's really good. Jennifer, do you have anything to add to that?
Sherrie always has good words. I think I was thinking about this today, and I'm thinking that for me, friendship is like knowing that I have somebody who takes the time to know me really,
mm-hmm.
and who really wants to know the good and bad parts of me and love me anyway.
Yeah.
And I think it's someone who supports me, encourages me, and then I do the same for that person. It's
mm-hmm.
not just one-sided, of course, but I feel like that's what it is for me.
Yeah, that's really good. So what is one of the most important qualities in friendship for each of you? What do you look for in a friend?
Those are two different questions for me.
Great.
So one of the most important, we discussed that in our Flourish group, and one of the most important things for me is grace. It's like what Jennifer was saying. She has such a great way with beautiful words to be known, all parts of me.
Mm-hmm.
And if we really believe we need Jesus, then the reason I need Jesus, I need grace.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a mutual relationship, a reciprocating relationship. So character is important. When I look for a friend, I think that the way I look for friends is whatever common place I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
I see someone and I think, wow, look at that character or something that stands out to them. And I think, I'd like to spend time with them and get to know them. They have something that draws me to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other times that it's like, oh, they seem like a really fun girl. I'd like to get to know her and have a little fun.
Yeah.
So.
That's good. Jennifer, what about you?
I think to piggyback off what Sherrie said is I think having some commonality is really where most of my friendships come from originally. So it's like we have kids that are in the same activities and we kind of connect in that way. But I think for me, just having some form of connection with that person. And honestly, most of my friendships are so very God-centered. And so a lot of times it's just this common thread of the Lord in our lives, and we're sharing something, and then we connect in that way. And then it just kind of grows from there.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that I actually like seek out or really go look for friendships. Honestly, most of my friends have come through Connect Group at church, or they have come through, things with my children or things like that. And so I think the quality, I guess, in that is just that we have something in common that we can connect in, and it kind of anchors us. And I feel like that's what the Lord does in my friendships, is just kind of connects us in a way that we always have that.
Yeah. When you think about it, it's really interesting how friendship evolves over time. Like in grade school, you're pretty much with the same people all the time. So you kind of have these forced friend groups. And then within that, you're going to have people you're closer with. But then you maybe go to college, go into the workforce, and it's like friendship doesn't come as naturally. Like sometimes you're looking for a new friend. I remember when I got married, Aaron and I were like, okay, well, we need some married friends too. Like we need to find some people that are in our similar life stage. And now that I'm expecting my first, I'm looking for moms that are a little bit ahead of me, like in that next stage, like, and sending, like, trying to build my registry, for example. I'm like, can you tell me what on here is stupid and what I need to add? And just things like that you're thinking, okay, I want to look for people who are maybe a little further ahead of me to be friends with so that they can share some of the things they've learned. And so it's just interesting how friendship evolves over time and in different seasons.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Sherrie and I even talked about this before. You know, we've been friends for a very long time, but we have had seasons where we were barely together, where we just occasionally, once every few months, would be like, hey, you still alive? Check in with each other. And we've had times when we were together weekly. And so it just kind of has fluctuated in that way. And I think if we'd have been like, well, she's not part of my life anymore, then we would have just moved on, if you will. And I think people are pretty quick to do that. And I think the Lord, of course, between us has been something to hold us together. But I also think that you can't just give up when somebody doesn't have the time to invest in you at that time, because I know she's had crazy busy seasons of life. I've had crazy busy seasons of life. And I think us always just knowing the other person is there is super important. And I don't know that everyone always has that, but we've been very fortunate to have that with each other, and to know that, like, she can give me space if I'm needing to, like, deal with my family, because I have 5 kids. I'm crazy busy, and she's now in an empty nest phase. And so I'm not always as available to get together. And so we have to be more intentional about it too, which is hard for me because I get, I'm like, I have these kids. Of course, now that they're getting a little more grown, it's a little easier. But yeah. And so I think sometimes people think, well, if you're not in my life every day or whatever, then they just think, well, we're not friends anymore. And I've never thought that with Sherrie. There's just always going to be that connection that we've always had.
Well, and finding friends that aren't easily offendable. Like, if I don't talk to you for months at a time, it's not personal. Like, sometimes it's just different life things have come up. Finding those people. I've got a few friends like that I've been with for years and years, and we talk a few times a year. But it's cool just knowing, like, hey, you're still a friend. Like, you're still here. We're doing our own things. She's in med school. Like, we're still here. And so it's kind of cool having that.
I think it's important to realize that some things just aren't sustainable at certain times in our life.
And that's okay. Like, it doesn't have to have all this pressure around it.
And we don't have to define it. It doesn't have to look a certain way. It can move and change. Because we hopefully are continually moving and changing and growing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I want to look at, what does Scripture say about friendship?
Well, when we did Flourish, we talked a lot about refresh. And that's the scriptures we looked at, how we refresh one another, because I think that's really important as a friend. I want to refresh. When I'm with my friend, I want to refresh her. And so one of the ways we refresh is by talking about God, because that's what's refreshing in our world of children and spouses and jobs and different things. So you can get pretty weary. So we talked about refreshing a lot. But today, I really was studying over Scripture, and this was really good to me. The Lord spoke to Moses face to face, as one speaks to a friend. And to me, there's nothing like FaceTime with someone who knows you, to sit across eye to eye and look each other, whether we're crying, whether we're mad, or whether we're just, everything's all great. And I think that is about friendship, face-to-face, FaceTime. That was one of the things. And one of the other things I saw in Scripture over and over was to celebrate with friends and to go and weep with friends. And that is something that you learn to do well if you stay friends with someone.
I've been reading through the book of Job, and it's such a great example of what friends shouldn't do and shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So I love that the Bible gives us examples in both categories.
Absolutely. And I think that I was thinking today how I think friendship is really important to God, and how he talks about it so often. And he doesn't give real specific, to me, definitions. He gives principles and models. And so that was really sweet to me today, as we're going to celebrate her birthday this evening. And as I thought about how grateful I am and what a treasure it is to have friendship. Yeah.
I think the thing I think about with Scripture so much is like iron sharpening iron. And I think one of the things that I love about Sherrie and our relationship is that when she's learning something new, she wants me to know it. And so, like, if the Lord is teaching her something about marriage or raising kids or him, whatever it is, she's always wants to show me and share that with me. And so I feel like, and vice versa, I do with her too. But I think that one of the things that I love is that we have sharpened each other over the years for sure. And I think we've both grown so much. And part of that is just watching each other grow, which encourages you to like, oh, I want some of that. I want to get that. And so for me, that has been just always sharpening each other, being willing to let someone see things in us. And she's never been like, hey, I see this terrible flaw and you need to fix it. She's never done that. But just in being with her and knowing her and watching her see things in herself and say, the Lord showed this to me, and her sharing that with me has been huge for me, because I'm like, oh, that's good, and then I go check it out more.
Well, and there's almost an accountability piece in that too, of keeping each other accountable to spending time with the Lord. I want to go back to what you talked about refreshing friendships. I think it's very clear, and sometimes, and we'll get a little bit more into this in a little bit, but it's clear to know when you're dealing with healthy friendships versus unhealthy friendships. A healthy friendship, we leave feeling refreshed. We leave and we're like, man, I just feel good. I feel refreshed. I feel renewed and revived. And then we have those friendships that we leave and we just feel kind of drained. And you're like, that really took a lot out of me. And those are friends that maybe need to be in the outer circle or not have as much influence on our lives. And we want to surround ourselves with the people that are speaking into our lives. We want them to be friends that are healthy, that they are speaking truth, speaking scripture into us. I think that's huge.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm glad to hear you say the friend circle, because there's lots of circles around until you get to the Holy of Holies, the intimate circle in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, thinking about it, that is how they set up the temple in the Old Testament. There's the outer and then you get in. Yeah.
Yes.
That is good. So how or why should you evaluate the qualities that you bring to a friendship?
Well, I think for me, I know that I'm a sinner and I get in my own feelings and distractions and things. And so I do have to evaluate sometimes, like, am I really being a good friend, meeting them where they are? Or is it one-sided? Or are they always the one reaching out to me? And there's been moments of that where I've had to say, I'm sorry, you're always coming to me and I need to reciprocate that. And so I think for us to have a healthy friendship, we have to look at ourselves realistically and we have to say, am I pouring life into this friendship or am I not? Am I sucking it dry? And so sometimes there's seasons though. I mean, we always talk about this. There's seasons of life where I need more from her than I can give to her or whatever friendship it is. I think we all have seasons of that where I'm just hurting or I'm wounded or I'm lost in some way, and desperate. And a friend really seeing that in you and them knowing, okay, this is a season that she just needs more of me than she can give to me, and not giving up on that friendship because of that, which I think sometimes we're very quick to do. If people aren't giving things that we think we need, we tend to just be done with that situation, in marriage, life, whatever it is,
Exactly.
Kind of scorekeeping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I called you last time. You have to call me, kind of the back and forth. Thankfully, we haven't had that.
I've called you 3 times and you've only called me once. Yeah. That doesn't work.
No.
Yeah.
It doesn't. No. So how do you go about evaluating yourself as a friend?
I think being in the Word and being in friendships where you really know each other, I think it happens. I think you unfortunately see the things about yourself, like Jennifer was talking about. Even when you have conversation and we're asking each other questions, we'll be like, oh, wow. But but I think it's important to know what I bring to a friendship, and it's important to know what qualities. And there's a lot of things we're different about. And so there's been things where, like, for me, it comes a little more natural to sit with someone when they're hurting. And Jen's all about practical. And I love that because that doesn't come natural for me. And so she's taught me how important a good casserole is.
Love a good casserole.
Yes. Or some white chicken chili or whatever. And so I've learned a lot about that, so that I'm more of a balanced friend. And there's always going to be things that come more natural for me because that's my strength. But there's things that I've learned, and they've been amazing in my friendships, helped my friendships so much.
That's good. What do you think the greatest challenges are to making and keeping friends?
I believe time and differences.
Okay.
For me, and I mean, I could spend a lot of time talking about that. We get time. We're all busy. And I think that there's times, like she was talking about, things change. I just need more time now as I get older, that I need more time to recharge. And so I have to have that margin in my life to be a good friend. And differences, I think our world is so polarized, and it shows up in different ways in our life and in our friendships. And sometimes things aren't right or wrong; they're just different.
Yeah.
So,
and sometimes we allow that to prevent us from being friends with someone just because they think differently, and then we miss out.
Yeah, and I've learned so much from diversity versus being with people that think like I do and behave like I do. So,
yeah. Jennifer, do you have any thoughts?
I think the biggest challenge for me is time, and I think honestly, selfishness. Just like, I could choose to go do that with that friend, or I can, do me time, and I think our world kind of encourages me time. And I think, but for me, what I've learned is that me time, the best me time I can have is with my friends, because if they're good friends and if they're pouring life into you, then you feel better after you're with them. I don't think I've left a conversation with Sherrie or left Sherrie's house, or a time together that I've walked away feeling like, well, that was terrible. I always walk away, thanking the Lord for her, always walk away thinking of things that I can take from our conversation or things that I can grow in and learn from.
Well, and it's always funny. I feel like every time I'm getting ready to go be with friends, it's kind of like, oh, I'm tired. Work was long. I don't know if I really want to go. And then I go and I get there and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I went. Like, this is so fun.
I'm notorious
just the build up.
I'll be honest. I used to be that way about Wednesday night church. I'm too tired. I don't want to really go. And then people would ask me, how are you? I'd be like, don't ask. And then after church, I'd be so glad that I went.
It's just getting ourselves out the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think parenting has been the biggest thing to pull me away from giving time to people. And it's the very thing that drains us the most, that we really need to be with people who can refresh us and understand what we've been dealing with or going through. And I think I've used it kind of as an excuse a lot of times, just like, I have all these kids, whatever. And it's been hard. And thankfully, she's been very gracious with that. I know you're busy, but, and just like, finding time to sneak away and, to be able to refresh yourself, I think is important.
Well, and it helps to have a friend that will give you grace in that, but also call you out on that. I have a friend and she'll give me the space to pull away. But if I keep pulling away, she'll be like, There was something we had recently and she was like, hey, are you going? And I said something like, honestly, and I gave her some lame excuse. I was like, I'm really tired. Like, it just feels like too much right now. And she goes, that's not going to slide. Or it was a thing where we had to bring food. And I was like, I just really don't have the time or the energy to bring this. And she's like, that's not an excuse. Like, I'll make it for you. You're coming. And I was like, great. Thanks. Just having these friends that'll call you right out.
Yes, but you could have responded so differently to that, right? You could have just been like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm not doing that. And then just be mad, whatever. Yeah. So you also are giving her grace to say what she thinks. So it's kind of a mutual thing. But we were laughing because that is so us. I'm the one who's always like, yeah, I mean, I thought I might want to do that, but I changed my mind, or like, I mean, it's like my fun-loving friend self wanted to go do that, but then the reality of the day, I've been at school all day.
End of the day self is too tired.
Yes, exactly.
And one of her favorite things to say is, what was I thinking?
I do say that a lot. Why did I sign up for this? What was I thinking? Yeah.
Well,
and she's like, it'll be great. You should still go.
It's fine. Yeah. You're like, this is what you're thinking. You're still in this.
Yeah.
Well, how do you seek out a new friend? Go ahead.
Sorry, we talk over each other all the time.
No, that's fine.
We were talking about this, and I don't know that I necessarily seek out a new friend. I don't really think I've ever thought, hey, I need to add some more friends to my life and seek them out, honestly. I think truly most of my friends, we have a common thing. Really, the people that I spend the most time with, the Lord is in common with us. So we've met at Connect Group. We've met at a church thing. We've met in some kind of way that way. And I think that is kind of where my friendships come from. But like Sherrie said earlier, sometimes there's a person I'm like, oh, I really want to get to know them more. I'm less like that than Sherrie. She's more that way than I am. And I tend to kind of just live in my little bubble, which is kind of a bad thing. And she's good to kind of nudge me a little bit, to go to things and kind of make friends. So I don't know that I necessarily seek out new people. And probably the season of life I've been in the last 20 years of raising kids, and I've been doing it a long time, I've just been so full. My plate has been so full with that. I'm like, I can't add anything
What's in front of you
to it.
Kids.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sherrie, what about you?
We talked about this. I feel the same way. I don't usually seek out new friends. It's the whole thing that we talked about earlier. I see someone and I see a quality and I think I'd like more of that in my life. I wonder how they have developed that part of their character. But I have in my life at times prayed, Lord, I pray that you would give me someone to love that doesn't know you. And for me, that's probably going to be with a friendship. And so I have to be careful with that because it takes time to invest. And I don't always have a lot of time. But, and I'm surrounded by Christians and people that love the Lord, and that's our common, and that's good. And I don't know a lot of people that aren't Christians. And so one of the places, and I really feel called to people that say and believe they're Christians, but maybe they don't serve or they're not active. I don't know what the right terms are anymore. Yeah. And so the gym has been a good place for that.
Okay. The Lord has been pushing me into this too, because I work in a church. I'm very active in my church.
Yeah.
There was a point when I realized there is nobody around me that is not a Christian. And so that's when I joined a bar class and a bar group so I could be around some people. Now, I still live in the Bible Belt and a lot of Christians are still everywhere. Great. Love that. But I wanted to have somewhere that I would meet people that may not know Jesus. Along those lines, how do you know when it's time to end a friendship? And then how do you do that well? I know there's a popular thing in our culture now about ghosting people where you just stop talking to them, stop seeing them, just avoid them. You turn into a ghost essentially. And that's not a healthy way to end a friendship. So how do you know when it's time? How do you do that?
I think that's a complicated question also. There's not really been, I think, one person in my life that I've ended a friendship with. And I'm pretty mature in age. I think that I don't allow people to get to my holy of holies if there's red flags. Because I think friendship does take time. And so over time, slowly, like any relationship, getting to know somebody, I decide if they're going to get to come closer or if they're as far as they're going to get to come. And so I think that's prevention. I like good limits and boundaries and prevention. And then also I think when troubles and problems come up in a relationship, good old Matthew 18, communication and face-to-face conversations about, hey, I think that we're not good for each other in this way. What do you think? What are your thoughts? And continue to try to resolve it. But this all or nothing doesn't really, I don't think it's healthy. I'm either in or out versus there's steps to try to resolve it. And then we may both decide to walk away.
Yeah.
So.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. I don't think I've really ever purposely ended a friendship. I don't think I've ever had someone where I'm like, this person's not good for me. They're not healthy for me. Because I think Sherrie said, I kind of see before it gets to that point where we're super close that I'm like, yeah, that person's not going to be, healthy for me to be around. Either I don't think like I should when I'm around that person, or they're negative, or they're gossipy, or whatever. And I think I just kind of already pull myself back from it. And so I think that's true. I feel like every relationship that I've had really is some of them have been seasonal. And so there have been some ends to some of them, kind of Like, I don't feel like they're not my friend anymore. And if I needed them, I think they'd mostly still be there for me. But just our life circumstances have changed. And so we're not together much or, things like that. But I've really never honestly had to end.
So then maybe it's a different question. Maybe it's more, what boundaries do you set up to prevent people from maybe getting in too close? Like, I'm thinking about people that you have to do, like maybe you're in the same Connect group with, your kids are doing this on the same team together. You, for some reason or another, you're on the same serve team, are having to be around this person a lot. What boundaries are you putting up then so that it isn't too close to an unhealthy point?
I think that's a whole nother podcast.
But we need a part 2.
But that's our next flourish group.
Yeah, perfect.
But I do believe that when you're healthy and you know yourself well and you're self-aware, I think it's just important to go slow, especially if there's big differences. And I have friends that we have lots of big differences, but you go slow to see how that's going to work, how you're going to walk that out. And I think you can love people well without letting them up in the Holy of Holies. I don't know if that really answered your questions, but I think it's really important to know me.
Well, and I think that's a good reminder to go slow, because I know sometimes, like, I had a season out of college when I really didn't have friends for a while, and I almost would say getting to a desperate point of I need friends, and then we rush into things. And so I think that's a good reminder that it's okay to take it slow.
It is. I think that's wisdom. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I don't know if I can add anything to that. Repeat the question to me. Or you said, how do you set up boundaries?
Yeah, how do you set up boundaries to keep somebody from reaching an unhealthy point of friendship with you?
Long pause.
That's okay. If you don't have anything, that's fine.
I'm just trying to think of how
I think, say, for instance, you're in a people group and there's someone that has a real strong personality. And it might not be strong to someone else, but for you, maybe it feels strong.
It's a little much.
Or high maintenance. And you decide, I'd like to get to know her and give her a fair chance, but I'm going to do it with others.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start out with others with a buffer. And, we're not all meant to be friends.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're called to do that. And so, or asked to do that even. I don't think it's reality. Not everyone likes me, and I don't like everyone. And there was a time in my life when I was young, I would have thought that was the most terrible thing in the world to say. But it's just reality.
Yeah.
And so I think going slow, choosing to be with other people, realizing that you might not be close friends, and it's okay. But you can still be kind and respectful.
Yeah, that's good. Well, as we close out today, what would you say that you've learned from each other's friendship?
Oh, gosh. I've learned so
in 30 years
much. Yeah, I've learned so much from Sherrie, honestly. And honestly, when we became friends, we both were very young. I mean, we were younger, and we were unhealthy in a lot of our thinking too. We hadn't grown spiritually a whole lot, and we had some unhealthy habits, I'm sure, in our friendship. And we had unhealthy habits in other friendships, just the way that we did things because we didn't know any better, kind of. And so I think for me, I think I've learned a ton of grace from Sherrie and her willingness to offer that to me. And I think she's probably had to give me more grace than I've had to give her, honestly. And I've learned that from her in a great way. And like she mentioned earlier, I'm very practical. I'm very if I see a need in someone, I'm like, how can I meet their need, like their physical need or whatever? And she's so much better about meeting emotional needs. And I've learned a lot about that from her because she's really good about just sitting with someone as they grieve. And I struggle with that a little more. It's harder for me to do that for people. But I'm like, I'll bring you dinner. I'll watch your kids, and she's like, I'll sit by you and hold your hand while you cry. And, we all need friends like that. And so I feel like I've learned a ton from her in those kind of ways.
It's good. Sure.
It's a lot, and I can get really emotional. because I'm so grateful and I treasure friendship so much. But what I have in my notes is the number one thing Jennifer's taught me is grace and that the Lord loves me. And I think that's what friendship should bring to others is that they know that the Lord loves them because it's a gift from the Lord.
That is so good. That's a good one to end on. Well, before we fully wrap up, we have 2 questions we ask all of our podcast guests. What is something you're learning and what is something you're loving? So let's start with something you're learning.
I just did a little class thing, and something that I feel like the Lord is showing me and I want to do is finish strong. And so I'm learning about finishing strong and what that looks like as I age, because our world tells us it means to rest more and to be more selfish. And you get tired, you know. So I want to finish strong. And do you want me to do the love thing too now?
Let's do Jennifer's learning first.
Something I'm learning is that I don't always have to know the answers. And the Lord has really been teaching me a lot about that, because parenting, one of the hardest jobs I've done, I know this is not a parenting podcast, but parenting has been a learning process for me. And I feel like I used to think I had to have it all figured out and know all the answers, or I was going to really totally mess up my kids or whatever. And I feel like He has been showing me over the last probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years, honestly, parenting teenagers, that I don't always have to know the answer and I don't always have to do it all right, that He has enough grace to cover my mistakes. He has enough grace to fill in the gaps for me. And I feel like that's something I'm continually learning as I grow.
That's good. All right. Now what about loving?
This is going to sound cheesy.
I'll take it.
Okay. Because of empty nest and where I am and in my life in this season, I love my church.
Aww.
And I'm excited about being more available to my church and to being involved. And I love the things that are going on here. So that's what I'm loving right now. I love empty nest and I love my church.
So great.
Mine's way less spiritual than hers. I am loving audiobooks.
Me too.
Consuming audiobooks. I read at least listen to at least one a week. I've just love them. So that's my thing right now, is just where is my next audiobook? I've got to find my next audiobook.
I love that. So there's an app. It used to be called Scrobbed, but I think they changed it to Ever something. And it's $9-10 a month. And you have nearly unlimited audiobooks. There have been very few on there that I haven't been able to find. And it's not like Audible where you have to use a credit every time. You just pay your monthly fee and then you've got all these audiobooks. It's amazing. Okay. But my husband tells me that, because I'm a big audiobook girl, he's like, well, it doesn't count as reading a book. You just listen to it. And I'm like, oh, it counts. It fully counts.
I count it. Yes.
Thank you.
I'm
okay. I got another vote.
They count for me because I honestly, as a busy person at work, I'm a teacher and I have all these kids and I have a husband and a life and, a church and things.
Friendship.
Yeah. Friendship, all the things. And so for me, I can mindlessly fold laundry or sweep the floor, or when I'm in my car, I want to listen to it. In fact, I get a little annoyed when all my kids are in the car because I can't listen to it, because I'm just like, oh, I can't listen to my book in the car.
I feel double productive when I have one on.
Me too. Yeah. A sweeping the floor,
we get each other
dinner. Yeah. I'm all about that. So audiobooks.
Well, y'all, thank you so much for being here today and giving us a peek into your friendship.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for listening to the Equip Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to be the first to know when a new episode drops. And follow us on social media to stay connected. We're at GABC_women. See you next time.